Well, after 55 long years and plenty of heartache along the way, England are back in a major tournament final. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Shooting Czars Euros podcast with me, Stuart Marshall. But this time I'm without Bryce and Alex. However, I am joined by another guest. You would have seen him covering the A-League for Fox Sports this year, and he's a regular on Fox Sports News covering football. His name's James Dodd. Doddy, what a morning we've had. And welcome back to the podcast for the second time.
Stewart, thanks very much, mate. Good to be here. Yeah, what a morning indeed. When my alarm went off in the wee hours, I'm used to getting up at that time for work, but this one felt different. Knowing that England had this what feels like a once in a lifetime chance to reach the final of a tournament on home soil. Getting up for that was enough, but then sitting through and watching Damsgaard score that unbelievable free kick, and then, Kasper Schmeichel producing that save from Raheem Sterling at close quarters, and you're thinking, oh no, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But then, they rode the storm, Denmark, but ultimately England showed good composure, I think. And they hadn't been behind in this tournament before today, and I just think that was a test that they had to pass, that moment in particular. And they did so, that Denmark didn't lead for very long. And from then on, I think England always felt as though they were the ones that, if anyone was going to win it before a penalty shootout, I think England probably felt it would be them. And they got there in the end. It's a bit of luck with the penalty. I know it's been hotly contested, and I've seen 1,000,001 different angles of the contact or no contact, whatever people want to say, but they got the job done, mate, and happy days.
Well, let's start there then. You mentioned it's been hotly contested and debated already, in the however many hours, 7 or 5 hours since the game finished. But was it a penalty? In your opinion, was that a penalty?
So I look at this in a couple of different ways, right? If that was committed outside the box, it would be a foul every day of the week. Just like the foul from Luke Shaw on Christensen that led to the free kick is given outside the box. If that was in the box, a referee probably doesn't give that as a penalty, right? So if you flip them and then you see the camera angles, and I thought, as soon as I saw the first one, I thought, oh, he's gone over. He's not, the defender's pulled his leg away. But then when you see the reverse angle, and this is the one that unfortunately wasn't shown on the TV broadcasts, but it's the one that the VAR crucially had and they looked at, then his knee makes contact with him. Now, what happens is his knee makes contact, Marler's knee makes contact with Sterling, but then the defender on Sterling's left also makes contact with Sterling. So it's almost like he's sandwiched. It's like a pinball. Raheem Sterling's like a pinball between the two defenders. And for me, I think it is a penalty. I was really uneasy or unsure, I suppose is the better word, when I saw the first ones. But then afterwards, the fact that the VAR, people were saying, why didn't the VAR check it? The VAR did check it. They had that replay, they saw it, and they said to the referee, now, bear in mind, it's not up to the referee whether he goes over and has a look. If the VAR says to the ref on field, we've reviewed it, stick with your decision, is correct. He's then not going to say, actually, do you know what, though? I still want to come over and have another look. That's not how it works. The referee says, okay, I've got the decision correct. I'll stick with the penalty. So, I understand why people are saying it was soft, and I think it is soft, but you got to remember Raheem Sterling, he's light anyway, and he was traveling at some speed weaving through those players. It doesn't take much to knock someone off balance. You think about if someone was running along and you get a little trip on your heel, it's quite easy to make someone fall over, but regardless of that, they still saved the penalty. Harry Kane in the right place at the right time to follow it up. And, from then on, the way in which England managed that game was tremendous. I think they kept the ball for about 2.5 minutes at one period as they were winding down the clock, and probably strung together 35, 40 passes in that time. And it was fantastic. And I've never seen an England team manage a game quite like they did. So, I understand how people say it was soft, but I do think it was a penalty.
Interesting. See, I don't think there was enough contact, but I understand what you're saying. But I guess the grievance people have with situations like that, where it's maybe like the referee has got the decision wrong, but like you say, maybe there isn't enough evidence to overturn it. People want to see the referee go to the screen, right, and sort of milk it like that. But like you say, that isn't how it works. And if if the VAR doesn't think that it needs to be overturned, then the referee's never going to go and have another look at the screen. So, yeah, fascinating. It's almost like I kind of feel as well, maybe, although it's great England won. I mean, some people say they don't care how we win, but, for England to maybe win the match in that manner, dodgy call. And then Harry Kane probably, I don't think I've ever seen Harry Kane hit a worse penalty than what he did. He just completely, messed that one up. Schmeichel saved it. But, interesting flashpoint and major talking point for the game. I can't really remember two other big sort of talking points like that from a refereeing perspective in the tournament. So, I mean, like looking ahead and sort of like I mentioned at the start, 55 years it's been for England since the World Cup win in '66. There's been 3-4 semi-finals lost. What does this mean for England? You're English. What does it mean for the nation? Like, can you sum that up? Obviously, it's obvious what it means, but like, it does. Yeah. How do you think this win will, go down for England in years to come?
I think you often hear people talk about generational things, be it a political movement or whatever it may be. Often it is referenced in sport, and that really is what happened this morning. I'd seen England reach. I was in Russia when they got to the 2018 semi-finals at the World Cup, and I'd seen them at Euro '96. It was the first tournament I remember watching, even though I was really young. I still remember it, and I just think this is something for so many people, and especially people of an older generation who are just so synonymous with England falling over, and if something can go wrong, it will. Like, obviously I wasn't even alive at this point, but Diego Maradona's handball, or the moment against Germany where Frank Lampard has the shot and the ball is so far over the line, it's ridiculous. Like, how that wasn't even spotted at the time, it's
the ghost goal.
Me. The ghost goal.
Yep.
Things like that. It's almost become, and this is where I had this sort of, back and forth with a few people on Twitter about the song "It's Coming Home," because that is the antithesis of what that song is about. It's about England accepting and laughing and being accustomed to how bad and how crap they've been over the years. And if something can go wrong, it will. And it's kind of just what we're used to as football fans, from an international perspective with England. So this reaching the final, and don't get me wrong, I do think, I know we'll come on to this in a bit, I do think Italy will probably win, but it just means so much to that nation, and that I can only speak from my personal perspective, but speaking to my friends and my family constantly throughout the last 18 months and how miserable everybody has been in the UK with how COVID-19 has affected that country, and some of the real dark times that they went through, given looking at the death rates on a daily basis and how alarmingly that hurt the country. To see them reach the final of a major tournament with someone like Gareth Southgate in charge, who is one of the nicest, most respected, and just genuinely good human beings in charge. It feels brilliant, to be honest.
Well, let's go to Gareth Southgate, because that was another talking point I wanted to bring up. Gareth Southgate, when he first took over, his story has been quite remarkable. Obviously, he's got the history of missing the penalty in Euro '96, and there's all sort of redemption stories being thrown about for this tournament. Where does this put him? I mean, if he can deliver a trophy for England, is he going to get knighted? I've got a funny feeling he will. That's one thing. But in terms of like his management, it doesn't feel like there's been a manager like Southgate for England within the last 20 years at least. I saw something on Twitter. Someone said there hasn't been a manager like Southgate managing England since Sir Bobby. So that's obviously quite a hefty comparison in that sense. But yeah, talk about Gareth Southgate, and do you think, like what he's done, like it's quite an amazing achievement in terms of how he's transformed this team, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. And when he first got the job, a lot of people thought that he got it kind of, by accident. He was the kind of the successor to Roy Hodgson in that he was an easy choice, and people weren't really sure about what he would do because his managerial club career hadn't really pulled up any trees. Actually he hadn't done that well at all. And
at Middlesbrough, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was at Middlesbrough. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think most people then thought, what is he? We have this thing in England where it's like, a foreign coach must always be better because, maybe it's because, in a footballing sense, they're not English coaches aren't as sexy as foreign coaches, and the way their methods and the way the football they play. But like I said earlier, first and foremost, what he is he's a fantastic human being, Gareth Southgate. And that was highlighted none more so than at the start of the tournament when there was all the attention about the England players taking the knee before kickoff. And the way he dealt with that situation, it was such a credit to not just the Football Association, but England fans, the people we've got such a leader like that who is, he was so measured in the way that he was speaking about it. And he said, listen, regardless of your political persuasion or what you think of it, this is not a political message that we're sending out. It's one of equality. And, please respect us. We're doing it. We need your support, but please support us in doing this because it's what we feel is right as a football team. And, before a ball had even been kicked, for England manager to come out and say that, that's given that how, divisive, unfortunately, taking the knee has become. It's so refreshing to see that. Gareth Southgate seemingly isn't, he's been through the lowest of lows as we're playing with England, missing that penalty at Euro 96. And then to see him, get the support of everyone. Like there aren't many people, you can criticise someone's style of play, but there aren't many people that would criticise Gareth Southgate going into this tournament because, if anything, people were saying he's been a bit too cautious, but that's only because of the sheer attacking nature of the talent he's got available to him. But it's just, I've been fortunate enough to interview Gareth a couple of times, and I've met him a few times, and he's just a really nice man who's got an excellent, the World Cup semi-final against Croatia, that gave him a lot of credit, I think. But to back it up and do what he's done now, puts him up there. And he was the only England manager to have reached two semi-finals since Sir Alf Ramsey, who won the World Cup with England in '66. So for him to reach this final, regardless of what happens against Italy, Gareth Southgate, I think they're going to give him a new contract anyway, but he absolutely deserves it. And you can tell that he's the media like him, which isn't always the case in England with England managers, and the players really like him as well. And fair play to him because I think he's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, he's just changed the whole perception around the team, hasn't he? He seems like a genuine person, and he's personable, and he's got time for every player. And I think that was evident in his after the quarterfinal win when obviously won 4-0, beat Ukraine 4-0. But he was sort of saying in his post-match presser, the people the team members I'm thinking about the most are the ones that I didn't get on to play, like Ben Chilwell and Connor Cody. But he's obviously his credibility is grown throughout this tournament. I don't know. Everyone's seemingly is trusting him, and maybe all those doubts about whether he was, good enough and cutthroat enough and skilled enough for this job. I saw Gary Lineker threw out a tweet during this game, and this was like an interesting touch point in the game as well. He subs on Jack Grealish in the 67th minute, but then subs him off in extra time. So he subbed the sub to bring on Trippier to shore up the second half of extra time to get the win. But even that, is Gareth Southgate ruthless enough to, get the job done in these big matches? And that was maybe a signal that, yes, he is, because, that doesn't happen a lot. But
it's even like the Phil Foden decision as well. Phil Foden started, everyone thought Foden's the man. He's not going to lose his place. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I think since Bukayo Saka was fit and available, since he got given the chance against Czech Republic, Phil Foden hasn't started a game. And, Saka's was injured, missed the Ukraine game, comes back straight in. Jadon Sancho played well, for example, and there's all the clamour about getting Jadon Sancho into the team. And, he played that one game against Ukraine, then Saka straight back in. So Gareth Southgate has proven that, he's not a soft touch.
Not afraid to make tough decisions as well. So, quick word on Harry Kane. He's now equaled Gary Lineker as England's joint highest scorer in a major tournament, which is scary considering he's only 28. And you wonder how many more major tournaments he's got in him. So, yeah, he's going to break the England goal scoring record. But it's funny how, talk through the storyline of Harry Kane in this tournament. Early in the tournament, he wasn't scoring, but as he always does, he finally scores and, shut everybody up, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And, going into this tournament, I think there was obviously all the speculation about Harry Kane wanting to leave Tottenham. And I don't know whether that played a part in where his head was at. I don't think it did, but you never know unless he comes out and says otherwise. And as the England captain as well, I think he feels as though he's got competition for places in that England team in the centre forward lines, but he knows if he's fit, he starts. He's the captain for one, but he's the best striker. He's one of the best strikers in the world. But the fact that everybody was very, very quick to jump on Harry Kane because he hadn't scored, it was bizarre because, Tottenham fans will tell you this. Harry Kane isn't just a goal scorer. Like he's a complete forward. He brings others into play. And you saw that in spades for England's opening goal. Dropping into space, the pass to, put it this way, if David Silva had played that pass into the path of Bukayo Saka, everybody would go, "Oh, magnificent!" That's look at the technique of the class. But because Harry Kane's done it, everybody was seemingly surprised. But he does that a lot, and that's a real part of his game: is dropping deep and allowing players to run in behind him. And it's one of the reasons why Raheem Sterling has had such a good tournament in front of goal, but in general has been one of England's key players because he's got the ability and the kind of freedom to run in behind and make the runs where he wants to make the runs. Bukayo Saka's really thrived from it as well. But, I just thought you could see what it meant when Harry Kane did score that second goal against Germany. It kind of felt like it was liftoff. And you could see the celebration, what it meant to him. But also it was like, the 2 goals against Ukraine was a kind of, for all those people that doubted me, well, here I am. And you give me the ball in the box and I'm going to score. And that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like with Harry Kane.
Do you think, just a quick one, is he going to leave Tottenham this summer?
I think he probably wants to. Whether or not, Manchester City look like they're the front runners for him and they haven't, as such, spent any cash yet and they've got to replace Sergio Aguero somehow. And, I don't think Gabriel Jesus, for as good a player he is, I don't think he is the replacement for Sergio Aguero, and they obviously want Harry Kane. It's just, good luck to whoever having to do business with Daniel Levy at Spurs, because if he wants £150 million for him, he's not going to get a penny less than that.
No, not at all. And that seems like that's the sticking point. I think Guardiola's been quoted in a Spanish publication saying that replacing Aguero's going to be tough because the numbers that these clubs are quoting for their players is just too high, and he's worth plenty in this current market.
Yeah.
Now, just talk about the defence quickly before we get on to Denmark. Just Harry Maguire has come in, and I actually think Harry Maguire is England's best defender. For some reason, there's so much conjecture around Harry Maguire. I don't know, people, the media just seem to rag on him a lot, but he's come in and shored up that defence to no end. I think he's played so well, but so many defensive options, and sort of how do you think they've sort of gone throughout the tournament?
Well, the fact they've conceded 1 goal in reaching the final would suggest that it's not all about one player, but it's about a unit. And they've played different systems as well. They've played a 3, they've played a 4, they've tinkered with it, and he missed a few games, Maguire, because he wasn't fully fit. But since he's come back in, he's so good. And I put this out on Twitter during the game. I thought he was outstanding today because it's not just the dominant threat that he is in the air in both boxes, but it's the way that he can start moves. He's so good at striding out with the ball. He's like a bit of a runaway train when he gets going. He's so big and he's so comfortable with the ball at his feet and driving forward and creating space. But he was also really good at stopping moves, like his interceptions and his, winning the ball on the halfway line, aggressive challenges. I thought it was fantastic. So I think he has been magnificent. The one which I think has gone under the radar is John Stones. John Stones, going into last Premier League season, everybody thought he was done at Manchester City. Like, they bought Nathan Ake in. They had Aymeric Laporte, who was excellent. Vincent Kompany was there, and they've bought in Ruiz, Ruben Diaz rather, and he was magnificent. But there's always this talk about, John Stones is having a good season because he's got Diaz next to him, or John Stones is good for England because he's got Harry Maguire next to him. Like, John Stones he has not put a foot wrong. Hopefully he doesn't put a foot wrong in the final, knowing that's probably when it will happen. But, those two have been formidable at the back. Kyle Walker has been excellent. Luke Shaw, for me, has been the best out of all four of them.
Yep.
There were times tonight, I remember maybe late in the game, or it was in extra time. I can't quite remember what passage of play it was, or time on the clock rather, but there was a moment where Denmark had a break on and Luke Shaw snuffed it out and was on the halfway line, in the smack bang on the centre circle, intercepted the ball, and England broke. And he did it, and that's how they scored against Germany, and the second goal, because he won the ball.
Yeah.
He puts the crosses in, like he has gone from strength to strength, Luke Shaw. And, I was one of those people at the start of the season. I wasn't entirely sure, what his kind of future would be at Manchester United, whether they'd look to try and replace him. But last season, he was phenomenal, and he's taken that form into England duty, and he's been brilliant as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think that passage of play, if Shaw didn't get that interception, then I think Denmark were away. So it was like he had to make it. But he's been immense. But no, we'll have to leave England there. We'll quickly preview the final. But quick word on Denmark as well. I mean, what a tournament they've had, all things considered. Obviously, the Christian Eriksen story was massive and will forever, be remembered. This tournament will forever be remembered because of that. But they're a really good team as well, aren't they? Just talk us through how you saw their tournament and how their game was today, especially.
Yeah, I'm pleased you said that, because the Christian Eriksen incident was harrowing, and I can only imagine what it was like for Simon Kjær and the rest of those Danish players that were there, watching their friend be revived, essentially. I think he was clinically dead at one point, and I can only imagine how upsetting and how traumatizing that must be. But to do what they did, it happened on two levels, or happened because of two things. One, the strength and the unity amongst that group was phenomenal, and everybody has noticed that, and everybody has said that, and I 100% agree with that. The character shown. Bearing in mind they lost their first two group games, it's not as if they lost the game against Belgium despite playing really well. To then come out in the circumstances like they did against Russia in that final group game was incredible. But Denmark did not reach the semi-finals of the Euros because of doing it for Christian Eriksen alone. They did it because they're a good football team. And I think they really surprised people, me being one, because I'll be honest, I'm not a Danish football expert by any means. I hadn't seen a lot of the individuals for Denmark other than those who are playing in the Premier League. But, their system, their coach, Kasper Hjulmand, has proven that he's a really, really good coach. Some of the patterns of play, them playing 3-4-3 today. At one point, I was thinking England need to change shape here, because Denmark are having a joy of, a nice period of play, and they look threatening. When they go forward, they look threatening, and that's credit to them, because you can't. I don't think you can reach the semi-finals on emotion alone. They've proven that they backed it up with some of their footballing ability. We know Kasper Schmeichel is a really good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
We know that Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is a fantastic midfielder. He's everywhere. Again,
what a game he had today.
Oh, he was absolutely everywhere. And Tottenham fans and Southampton fans will tell you, they knew that. They know how good a player he is. But for me, it's someone like Mikkel Damsgaard. It's been so, for such a young player to be so influential for a tournament, and knowing that he probably was not going to be the main man had Christian Eriksen been there and been fit. He's absolutely propelled himself into the inbox, if you like, of all these clubs around the world that are going, oh, I like him. He's good. He's proven what he can do. And, even players like Yannick Vestergaard, the defender, Southampton, I watched him last season, and sometimes he had some absolute shockers, and other times he looked pretty dangerous in the air, but you thought, he's kind of a middle of the road defender.
Yep.
But watching him in this tournament, he's been really good. and it's just been so nice. Kasper Dolberg, another one, just so so pleasing to watch this Danish team because, had they lost or not qualified against Russia in that final group game, I think most people would have gone, they've been truly well and truly affected by what happened to Christian Eriksen. But mate, they've been an absolute joy to watch, Denmark, and I think they've probably secured themselves as a lot of people's favourite second team.
Yeah, completely agree with all of that. They do have other notable players. Thomas Delaney plays at Borussia Dortmund. Martin Braithwaite's obviously at Barcelona. Dolberg, AC Milan, I believe. Andreas Christensen at Chelsea. So, yeah, they have a team of top quality players that play in all the big, the biggest teams in the biggest leagues. But, yeah, no, they were, and I mean, even in that first half, they weathered the storm of England's early pressure, but then completely switched the momentum of the game and then obviously got the first goal. But, we're looking dangerous and we're carving England up there for a period. So, yeah, completely agree with what you're saying. And, yeah, what a tournament they've had. And we'll probably see a lot more of them in the years to come, I think. All right, let's change tack and look at Italy and Spain. I am conscious of time as well. All right, so Italy v Spain. Italy, what's that? 30, 31 games unbeaten now. They missed, the 2018 World Cup in Russia. So this has been a renaissance under Roberto Mancini. They've had their troubles. They've looked the most dominant, probably the most consistent throughout the tournament. They've had obviously a couple of difficult knockout games, and they've now lost a couple of players to injury. But you said earlier that you think they'll get over England. Maybe we'll do predictions at the very end. But how did you see this game? Italy just managed to will themselves past Spain, didn't they?
They did, and this is all in a game where I think they had about 21% possession of the ball or something silly. It's a classic Spain performance, just missing that penetration up front. Long gone are the days when it was David Villa or Fernando Torres. And listen, that's nothing against Alvaro Morata. He gets his pelters, and he's also become their all-time top goal scorer in the European Championship. So, and his goal was brilliant. But what I was impressed with Italy by is that Spain had a lot of chances. They had the ball, but you just knew one good ball in behind from Italy, and they were in. And they, you fancied them. They've proven that way throughout this tournament. Austria, most people, they won all their group games. They play Austria, and you think, okay, it won't be easy because Austria, buoyed by the fact being first time through, but they did it relatively hard in that game, but they came through. Then it's Belgium. Everybody fancied Belgium, and they rode their luck again, but they defended superbly, which is, a characteristic that Italian football has had for a long, long time, but it was in spades in this tournament, and they overcame Germany. Then it was, Belgium rather. And then from then on, you're just thinking, there's something about this team. There's this aura of invincibility about them. They feel as though they're on this 32 winning match, unbeaten run. And you just feel as though they don't believe they will be beaten. I love the fact that, Giorgio Chiellini clears one out for a corner and he's celebrating because it's like him scoring a goal, Yeah. And I just watched them, and I know it's been said a lot, but it's because it's true. One of their biggest strengths is that they don't have a superstar. They don't have one player like a Cristiano Ronaldo at Portugal where everything has to go through him, and I think that's arguably their biggest strength, is that they are so well drilled in that they know what they have to do. They've got players who are capable of sublime quality. Jorginho, some of the passes we know he can play. Insigne is excellent. We know the two central defenders in Bonucci and Chiellini, but then you've got Federico Chiesa, to add to that, and Verratti in midfield. They've got all these players that are such a high level, but they're all willing to muck in and do the dirty stuff as well. And I think that's what's impressed me the most about it. And that's what I saw was so prevalent in that game against Spain.
Yeah, agreed. Interestingly, there's 3 Brazilian-born players in the Italian team. I think Jorginho, Toloi, and then Emerson as well, which is a funny little side story. And also, they're the best dressed by far. I mean, did you see the assistant manager or one of the other coaches that had the dapper sort of glasses on and the suit? That was anyway.
My favourite was was the post-match interview of Roberto Mancini, and the guy who took the picture off the side of this when Mancini was doing one of his flash interviews is like, he absolutely doesn't need to do this, but he's doing it anyway. And Mancini just had his jacket sort of on, how can I describe this? Essentially in his fingertips, but just holding it draped over his shoulder, like just looked like he was a catwalk model.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been very entertaining for this tournament as well. But yeah, a couple quick words on Spain as well. You sort of mentioned Morata there is now obviously the top goal scorer at European Championships, but they've got a couple younger players, which I think it's fair to say will be around for a few more years to come. Dani Olmo, I was massively impressed by his match. I hadn't probably watched a lot of Spain in this tournament, but watching Olmo, he was just finding space in between the Italian defense and sort of carving them open throughout this match. And then obviously Pedri, I think the stats are flying around on Twitter, put 2 passes wrong throughout the whole game or something like that. But yeah, maybe a quick word on those two and sort of how they've, Luis Enrique has sort of set the team up without obviously Real Madrid players.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Dani Olmo for me, because I'm a big fan of Spanish football. I speak Spanish and I pay a lot of attention to it. But Dani Olmo is a really interesting story. So he came through in Barcelona, well, Espanyol, I think it was first. Then it's Barcelona, but he then took the option to go to Dinamo Zagreb, and he could have been a player that could have had like a Dani Ceballos, if you like. He could have had a few picked up by a big team or made his way through to the Barcelona team, then had a few loans. Yeah, bounced around La Liga, but he didn't. He had the offer to go to Dinamo Zagreb. He went there. Then RB Leipzig picked him up. And he's so different, to a lot of other Spanish players. He's quick, but he's also got the flair about him, but a bit similar to sort of Ferran Torres-ish. But Dani Olmo coming inside, like some of the passes he was able to make. And he's a real superstar in the making, Dani Olmo. I think there will be probably one of the 2 big Spanish teams, I reckon, after another season will probably try and pick him up if they can. But Pedri is the one. I mean, if we look at Xavi and what we used to call him, like a metronome, it was just, he would just tick things over. The game would just go at his tempo. He's like a conductor, if you like, of an orchestra. But I remember, because, for those who are listening who don't know, my sort of second team is Almeria, the Spanish team. There's a family connection there. Mm-hmm. But I remember watching Pedri, I think it was last season, not last season, just gone, season before. He was, Las Palmas in the Segunda Division, just kind of a fleet-footed, like doing these like incredible bits of skill here and there. But, you fast forward his career, starts playing for Barcelona after, they'd already agreed a transfer for him prior to that. But he gets his go at Barcelona, but now he starts pretty much every game at the Euros and stands out in a massive semi-final of the European Championships against Italy, against that midfield like we just spoke about. I mean, how good is that? That shows you how fearless he is and how much confidence he has in his own ability, but also how much confidence someone like Luis Enrique, who was a midfielder himself, knows the position, has coached some of the best midfielders in the world in football history, to throw Pedri in and go and do what I know you can do. I mean, talk about big raps on him. So yeah, Mikel Oyarzabal is a good player. They've got a young team, Spain, and I think they've had a bit of a lull period, but I reckon in the next couple of tournaments, I think we might see them, provided they could get another striker in there. I think we might see Spain start doing okay again.
Bloody hell, that's not good news.
Prepared to have no possession.
Yeah. I think Pedri as well, didn't he? So he's at Barcelona now, but didn't he get turned away by Real Madrid, or wasn't there the story around that as well? He was there in the youth system and then didn't obviously cut it and had to find passes new, which is maybe one slip through the fingers of Real Madrid. Is that right? Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and do you know what's really similar to that? I remember the classic example of that is different players, but was Samuel Eto'o. So Samuel Eto'o was technically a Real Madrid player, and then they owned half of his rights with Mallorca. Barcelona wanted him, and then that's how that panned out. And Real Madrid were like, oh well, okay, fine. Whatever, we're not really sure how good he's going to be. You can buy his rights off us, and look how that turned out for Barcelona. So, he's. I like seeing the stats. There's always a nice little screenshot when you see those sorts of stats about his pass completion rate. But to do that in a game, with no disrespect, let's say against Almeria in La Liga, if they get there one day, is one thing, but to do that in a European Championship semi-final against Italy, I mean, that is very, very impressive.
Isn't it? So, Spain will be back. I think that's the general consensus.
Yeah.
All right, the final, Monday morning Australian time. I think it kicks off at 5 a.m. Sydney time. So for our Perth listeners, that's 3 a.m. in Perth, similar to how things have panned out over the past couple of days. But England v Italy. You mentioned at the start you think Italy will win. You've kind of touched on it. Is that because you just think you don't feel like they believe they're going to lose, or talk us through how the final will look?
I think it's a bit of both. I think they have to lose at some point. Just whether or not that will come, a 32-match unbeaten run ends in the final of a European Championship would be, ridiculous. It would be so unfortunate for them. Naturally, I hope it does happen, but I just think they not that this has too much of a role to play, but they'll have an extra day's rest going to the final that England will have done by virtue of the played yesterday, the day before. I think they probably look at England and think, if we can have a bit more of the ball, no problems if we can't, but if we can, I think they can probably dictate the game that they want it to be played. I just think, my heart says England, but my gut says Italy, just because as a football nation, they're experienced at this level, whereas I don't feel as though England are. But the thing that England have got going for them, Stu, is that they're at Wembley, they're at home. There will be Italian fans there, don't get me wrong, but there were a lot of Danish fans there who have seen that big block behind the goal today. But when the camera panned out, you saw the rest of Wembley.
Yeah.
And, you saw just how much support England had.
Yeah.
And I think the good thing about them is that they don't have... Sometimes you look at these situations and think, there's not a lot of senior players in there, right? Well, they've got Maguire and they've got Jordan Henderson and Harry Kane and a couple of others. Raheem Sterling is a leader in the team as well. But they've got a lot of young, fearless players. And I just hope, obviously, but I wonder whether that could work in their favour. They recognise from someone like Gareth Southgate, who will tell them, he'll get them up for the game. They don't need to be, but he'll get them up for it. But he'll also keep them level. And he will say, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you, at Wembley to win a European Championship final, something England have never done before. Go and take it.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how England handle the occasion. It's just funny hearing you say that England are an inexperienced nation in these games. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't it doesn't feel right almost, because of obviously the history in England and the size of the English game globally. Yeah. So funny to hear those. So, do you have a score prediction for us? You think it'll go the distance, win on penalties, or what? Too hard to say.
Too hard. It is too hard. Because every time I think of one thing, I think I'll go, yeah, but England will lose on penalties, or England will lose in extra time, or it'll be 1-0 to Italy and Italy will game manage right up until the last second. It's so hard to tell. But if I'm going to go anything, let's just say 2-0 England.
Come on, England. Let's see what happens. The whole team will get knighted after that. That's for
sure. They will. Yeah.
Well, Dotty, time is creeping up on me in particular. I've mistimed this slightly, but maybe we'll just leave it there. That's a complete wrap of the Euros action. How have you seen the tournament? Quickly, final word in terms of how it's been set out. The 12 cities. What was it? All 4 semi-finalists played all 3 group games at home. So that's an interesting stat. But, I guess in hindsight, it worked well given the COVID situation. It maybe would have been harder to host everyone in the same country. But how have you seen the tournament, especially the third place finished? 4 of the third place finishes progress as well to the round of 16. But, do you think any tweaks need to happen in terms of how the tournament's been set up?
I think with the, in a COVID landscape, UEFA had already made this decision to have the celebratory tournament, for like their anniversary. So it was going to be all around Europe, apart from Baku, which is a weird one, but you can only imagine why that happened. But, I just think that aside, I think the caliber of football has been excellent. Some of the games we've had, like some of that Spain-Croatia game and the Switzerland-France game was magnificent. The drama of the penalty shootouts.
The quarterfinals were amazing, weren't they?
Yeah, the quarters were sensational. And that game, Denmark-Russia, and that simultaneous with Belgium playing Finland. And I just remember really quickly watching that game. Denmark go 2-0 up. Then Belgium go 1-0 up at the other game. At the same time as that Belgian goal is ruled out, literally like seconds, Belgium goal was ruled out. Russia get a penalty in the Denmark. So like literally the whole group swung on its head. And and then watching Andreas Christensen thump that goal in for Denmark that basically sent them through to the knockout round. Like that was just incredible drama, and that's what this tournament's been about. Naturally, as you said earlier, it will be remembered for what happened to Christian Eriksen, and thank God, he's on the mend. But yeah, it's just been a real, and like these tournaments often are, the Euros is a really, really high standard of football, and we've seen it again. And it's, for me, it would be a dream come true if England could top it off and win it. But even if they don't, it's still been such an enjoyable thing. And, for me, this is also the first tournament that I've not been in England for or covered at the tournament. I was at the last three. So it's just,
How's the experience been? Better to consume it this way or what?
No, for me, no, I'd much rather be there. But I just, it's getting up at these alarm time, these weird alarms, and if I'm at work, I'm watching all the games anyway, the silly o'clock in the morning, and it has been different. But I've loved every second of it. I love any football. I could sit there and watch anything, and to get the chance to watch, this caliber of football it's a joy.
Yeah, it really is. And as I mentioned, Italy v England in the final, 5 a.m. Sydney time, Monday morning. But also interestingly, side note, Brazil v Argentina in the Copa America final on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. So plenty of good football to watch this weekend. Dotty, we could sit here and talk all day. I know it. But we'll have to leave it there this time around. 2-0 England. And thanks so much for coming back on the Shooting Czars podcast.
Pleasure, mate. It's good to see the podcast back as well. Really enjoying it.
Awesome. We will be back, Bryce, me, and Alex. Maybe another episode before the Euros final. But until then, thanks for listening.